Hello, faithful Illuminati listeners, and welcome back to the Shade Chamber. What you're about to watch and or listen to was previously a members-only timed exclusive from our YouTube channel, recorded back during early 5.2. While we haven't got around to the Natlan AQ episode, we had a good time recording this and putting together our thoughts on previous Archon quests. So we thought now was as good a time as any to release it to the public to tide you over before the next AQ episode. Now, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Truth is, and by that I mean I, am struggling with the podcast a bit right now. Genshin took more than it gave this year, and after 3 years and hundreds of hours of doing this, the channel isn't quite growing and supporting itself the way we'd hope. I'm reassessing how much I'm able to do right now, and the guys all have their own lives and obligations. If you're able and willing, you can kind of help keep things going by supporting the podcast on Ko-fi. Our Ko-fi is ko-fi.com. That's ko-fi.com/theshadechamber. Every donation, big or small, really helps our ability to bring this content to you. And you can come hang out with us at our Discord, Shades of Teyvat, which we share with fellow Genshin podcast Tales of Teyvat at bit.ly/Shades of Teyvat. All lowercase, no spaces. While I know a Discord is a poor substitute for a full episode, this will give you a chance to kind of hang out with us and get our thoughts in the meantime until we can rally and bring you the Natlan AQ. Thank you for your patience, and as always, thank you for your support. Enjoy the podcast. Gentlemen, Illuminati faithful and paying members, thank you for joining us in our second members-only video. A tier list that no one asked for, but everyone needed. That's right. Tonight, the chairwomen of the board of the Shade Chamber are going to rank every single Archon quest. So we have... Yay. So we have this template from good old Tier Maker. This includes every single patch update plus its splash art from 1.0 to 5.2. We're going to be evaluating it one patch at a time for every patch that had an Archon quest update, whether or not it was a mainline Archon quest or an Archon quest interlude, such as Dainsleif's appearances and that thing with Scaramouche. And we are, once and for all, going to be ranking them by how good they are. Now, let us walk you through the ranks. The Shade Chamber approved Archon quest tier ranks. At the top tier is the stunning Shade Chamber selection. This triple S is reserved only for the most salient, the most knocked our socks off, the greatest installments of the Archon quest. The stuff that made us go, boy, am I glad to be a Genshin fan. No one is doing anything like this. This was peak. Slightly lower on the tier list is actually surprised us. This is for stuff that didn't quite blow us away, but was better than we expected. The solid ones, the ones where like, yeah, you know, that one was quite good. I enjoyed that. A third from the top is what I think is going to be our biggest tier, which is Invited to the Banquet. And that one is just like, it was fine. I played it. I had neutral to slightly positive feelings about it. I thought it was adequate. Most of Genshin's writing, especially in the AQs, kind of falls under this tier for us. And the slightly less dignified tier right below that is, at least it's not Meropide. These are the ones that just really weren't that great. The stuff that doesn't make us happy to be paying attention to the story in this game, but not the worst it could be. The worst it could be is abyssal dog shit. And this is the stuff that is actively offensive and possibly some of the worst stuff in the game. And then we have one more tier underneath that will not be factoring into tonight's rankings. This is the not AQ tier. I have already preceded this tier with every single patch that does not have an Archon quest or interlude update. We will not be talking about the story content of these patches, nor will we be talking about character quests, hangouts, events, or anything that isn't the Archon quest category of story updates.
And mainly because, like, we're just saying, you know, this is what happens if you beeline the game and don't do any of the character quests, even though a couple of them are required early on, but let's ignore those.
Yeah, we are ranking the AQs on their own merits. So
I guess
let's get into it.
So we're starting with 1.0.
Yeah, I'm going to set 1.0 because that's going to determine everything else against it from now on. 1.0 included the entirety of the Monstadt AQ and the first 2 out of 3 chapters of the Liyue AQ. And I'm just going to say, those did not inspire us to make a Genshin podcast. And in fact, most of us played with a podcast on in the background or watching something else while we were hammering through these story sections. They did not leave any favorable impression on us and seemed just kind of like either rote anime or convoluted nonsense. And so I'm going to start us off by putting 1.0 and its respective legs of the Archon quest into at least it's not Meropide. Because while it would be a lie to say we can only go up from there, for the most part, that is true.
Now, look, this is an interesting point because the 1.0 Archon quests actually demand that you go from rank 10 at the end of the first Mondstadt, at the end of the first Mondstadt Archon quest to world level 18, which means the game kicks you out and basically says either do a bunch of daily quests or explore a ton. And in doing that, that's when I spent that's when I spent 10 hours just going through a lot of Mondstadt and Liyue from an exploration standpoint. So ironically, it did help to sell me on the rest of the game, but it did, I did see that, and, you know, I had played mobile games before, and looking at that, I was like, this is maybe going to be garbage if things keep up at this rate.
I remember that grind, and I think for a lot of people that was like where they first bounced off Genshin, because at this point we just knew that it was like a, you know, Breath of the Wild, like it was a gacha and an anime game, and so there was like some fun novelty with the open world exploration and some of the characters we were getting, but like that grind was kind of the first thing we hit, and we're like, oh, okay, yes, but this is still like a mobile game.
And ironically, it's funny because it's like that, like that's the second make or break point, because the first make or break point is actually Paimon. Like, I've had people actually say the opening cutscenes were so insulting they didn't want to play anymore.
Totally
so
valid.
It's a weird case of like putting your wrong foot forward, then putting your right foot forward, then putting your wrong foot forward again.
Yeah. And then ultimately it had a lot of feat that were like okay to good, but none of them were from the story. It was mostly like, this world is really pretty and it has very good music. But at this point, the story, the characters, and all of kind of the onboarding stuff isn't grabbing us.
Yeah.
It was kind of a hope of like, maybe this will get better. You know?
Yeah.
But the gameplay was really good, you know, which is like a big stressor. For as much as we say we like dislike the game for making us play it all the time, and the stories and what is probably going to be a lot of this tier list, the gameplay is always like actually great.
Yeah.
1.0 is definitely weird because it's like it's a proof of concept, and the story's not really there. It's mostly kind of the systems that would become innovated upon that are introduced here, rather than anything like, you know, super noteworthy by itself.
Oh, yeah, last point too. It's like, also thank God the game launched with Liyue, because if I was playing the beta, I'd probably be like, this is a really good project that I think is going to get canceled because Mondstadt's not interesting. In no way is anyone going to put enough money into this to fund the rest of the regions they're promising.
The second it starts to have a little bit of a flavor that isn't just like Hyrule. Like
just looking over those mountains and seeing Wangshu Inn, like yeah.
And like even the staunchest Genshin haters always have the moment where they see someone like flying around in Joyu and Karst and they're like, wow, this game is actually gorgeous.
Yeah. So I think 1.0 definitely solidly sits in, at least it's not Meropide.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, 1.1. How much time, if anyone knows off the top of their head, ran between launch and 1.1?
I think it was actually 6 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah, it wasn't very long.
That's pretty crazy.
Yeah, they were.
I think they had it in their back pocket.
Schedule. Yeah.
Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah, so 1.1, only one AQ chapter came out with that, and that was the finale of the Liyue AQ, which was the only good part of the Liyue AQ. Because that's where things happened that we were involved with besides shopping for a boomer. It also kind of had our first, like, pro-tag and tag in the form of Child, which was a pretty exciting turn, I think.
It was the introduction of the Fatui housewife himself.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I think he was introduced in the previous portions of the AQ, but this is where he was rollable.
Yeah.
This was where...
Yeah.
He's a boss now.
Yeah.
Boss with a cool form, everyone's like, that's a neat boy.
Yeah, that's when he started actually engaging with you on a gameplay level.
Yeah, this is the patch where suddenly people are clipping the game online because there are things worth clipping.
Yeah, it's actually kind of hype. So,
yeah, like fighting Child, dropping an entire house on a ocean squid.
Exactly. Nothing that's happening makes sense for why it's happening, but it is pretty cool. So
I would place it at invited to the banquet. I
actually would too. Yeah, it was more promising than the previous patch.
I agree. I wholeheartedly agree.
I think that 1.1 is like kind of a good barometer for the mean average of what a patch should be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does the Genshin specialty of meandering and wasting a lot of time, but then like sticking a really solid landing. Which we have already become wise to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Alright. Next version we'll be looking at is 1.4. That is the Windbloom update, but more importantly, it is the We Will Be Reunited chapter of the Archon quest. This is our first
introduction of Dainsleif.
Yeah. Okay, wait. Apparently there was a world quest with Dainsleif in some other version, but fuck it.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
Seriously? So he wasn't just introduced in...
Let's see. It's the world quest that serves as a prologue to the AQ chapter We Will Be Reunited.
Oh, you know what? I think...
Did he just, like, talk to Dainsleif?
Oh, wait, I vaguely remember this.
It's a world quest, but is it voiced?
I don't remember. I remember there was some jankiness around it, but I don't remember if that was voicing or not. Honestly, I forgot that it was classified as that beforehand.
Yeah, really weird. Because I just consider that leg of Dainsleif to be one thing. And so,
but Dainsleif is kind of weird for a while. Like, there's also like all of the Chasm stuff where you have to do, or initially you had to do all of the world quest stuff. So they were definitely like trying to like tie those two things together a lot more up until a certain point.
Because the Chasm double dips, I'm just going to say that 1.4 is everything to do with Dainsleif between Liyue and Inazuma.
Yeah.
There was some cool stuff in there, like, you know, we're no big fans of Dainsleif. I mean, maybe someday that will change, but honestly, he's been so lame for like 5 years now that he's gonna have to do a lot of work to get back in the good graces.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe that'll just be turning into a character finally, because he's really just here to like stall and pretend like there's an overarching story when clearly they're still writing it right now.
Yeah.
But
also, like, of note, the mechanical arms of Osile thing, like, that's weird and kind of lame.
They talk about it a lot.
The mechanical arms of Osile, what?
Yeah, no, the Abyss Order's, like, their goal in this patch was to like use an inverted statue of the Seven, and then like the eye of the first field tiller to like turn Osile into like a cybernetic giant squid monster kaiju
Wait, so there
slave.
was like
Yeah.
there was a Mecha Ghidorah of Osile on
No,
the
that's what
books,
they wanted
and we
to make, but they didn't.
They have mentioned
wow.
it.
See,
Yeah, no, they talk it up a lot and it never happens. And then in a later, like more recent interlude, they have the audacity to bring it up again. And like, if you could, like, you can talk all you want, but if I don't see Mecha Osile with like a profane god statue core,
I also
don't
feel
care.
like
Yeah.
it also didn't really make a lot of sense. Like,
Yeah.
I feel like it was
none.
a case where they're like, the only, like, at this point, the only real world-threatening event we have is Osile, so that's the one we need to latch onto as a reference point.
Yeah.
And, yeah. It was weird.
I'm gonna say for this one, I don't want to say it's abyssal dog shit because I think it introduced a lot of new concepts that we were excited about at the time.
it did
Were
set a
we?
couple of good precedents.
Because
Yeah.
like, I'm gonna
from a
admit,
story,
like, I've always been really biased against the overarching plot. I know none of us are really fond of it now, but like, I've always been a huge hater about it, so I didn't go into this one with good faith.
okay, there were a couple of things I liked, which was like kind of the return to some of the old areas. I did like the part where Razor and Andreas, the wolf, and
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
getting the names wrong again. And yeah, they showed up and they were dealing with the abyss.
Oh yeah, he's like, I
yeah,
fought that
Harold.
thing. That's kind of cool.
Yeah. So like, I think that this
Yeah.
did a lot to be kind of like, hey, you know, if there's like a thing that exists in the world that can still sort of come back, like it's not just the playable characters, it's also like that weekly boss you fight.
Yeah, and
You know,
I guess that is
like
also
it was nice, kind of like, you know, having the world feel lived in that way, because they could easily say like, you know, like, oh, that's a domain creature, you know, we're not going to talk about him anymore.
Yeah.
all right.
So yeah, a couple of like nice detailing. I would almost try to put it somewhere in between Invited to the Banquet and At Least It's Not Meropide, but I think it's going to fall on At Least It's Not Meropide.
Yeah, I would.
Even though I still have a couple of nice things to say about it.
I wouldn't invite it to
Yeah.
the banquet, sadly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. 2.0, the first new region in Genshin, the first couple chapters of the Inazuma Archon quest. Everything from pre-arriving in Inazuma, hanging out with Beto, doing that tournament for the Spent Vision, meeting Kazuha, finding out what's... I mean, I guess technically that's like 1.6, but I don't care. 2.0, yeah, everything up until the first confrontation with the Raiden Shogun, before we knew her as A, and we skedaddled and went into hiding after the Summer Slam at the big statue.
I think this one belongs in actually surprised us.
Yeah.
Because A, this was a new region. B, they were doing a lot of really interesting things that we hadn't encountered before, like Archon being actively antagonistic towards the main character.
Even though we had hints of it, like it didn't actually surprise us, because a
Yeah.
lot of the stuff that they did give us in the quest, they had actually foregrounded like ahead of time, and we sort of knew what was going to be up with it. But with that said, it was good. It was better than Invited to the Banquet. Yeah.
Right, but we also got that cutscene where A is like first confronting you and getting ready to pull the sword out, and like that was the cutscene that I think just spread across the internet. At that
Yeah,
point.
we're like,
yeah,
oh, they're
Genshin's a
doing
game.
some interesting stuff
Yeah,
here.
yeah.
Yeah.
And
Not to
then,
mention, this was the introduction of Inazuma as a region, which I think drew a lot of us in trying to find the real world, like cultural
Yeah.
influences they were using for it. That was incredible.
yeah,
Yeah.
so it was like,
I think,
oh,
too,
it's
that,
like
like-
my yokai games.
Yeah, and I think too, like, I mean, this is more related to Inazuma in general, and we've talked about this in other episodes too. But just like the fresh take of Japan as viewed by another East Asian culture, like
It was so cool.
that was really interesting.
I loved it. I loved the subjugation of the tourists, the just kind of the tenseness of this nation at war with itself. Spoiler alert: a better war story than Natlan. And I
Well,
think
Natlan isn't a war story. Well,
Yeah.
not in that way.
also, even like at the beginning, it was just even little things that surprised us, like the Traveler is reluctant to help at first, and we were even surprised by that, I remember. It was
Yeah.
like,
Yeah,
hey,
like
that's
one
cool.
of the most
They're
used
asserting their
crafts of
agency. They're
characterization.
like, I'm not your little, bitch boy. I'm here to save my sibling. Like, stop dragging me into nation's problems.
And also, like,
The
this is also
character
after
trait
the
that would-
Traveler has, like, re-encountered their sibling and is, like, kind of upset by it. So, like, also, like,
Yeah, they're a little cranky.
another one of the few times, like, the emotional arc carries through, even though that's gonna disappear later.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say this is like the only time where the Traveler's reluctant to help or do anything.
Yeah. And the only time where they seem really affected by seeing their sibling again.
Yeah.
So, it was good. It was good. That one did surprise us. And then the payoff of that, while there are many detractors out there, they're also wrong. 2.1 was so fucking lit. 2.1 slapped. 2.1 did so much that knocked us on our ass that we went and made a podcast about it.
Yeah, this was the patch where we were all just bought in at that point.
Yeah, we're like,
Rosie,
okay, I'm in for the long haul for this fucking game.
yeah, like the confrontation with Rosie, the payoff of finally like confronting A about everything that's going on. Kazu has double vision use in deflecting the what's the finishing move called?
The
Muso
no
Hitotachi.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
Muso no Hitotachi. Yeah, like
also the use of it in that cutscene where they did like something artistic where they have
Yeah.
like, because it's like that wasn't physically a giant A attacking, the Traveler. That was just like cool paneling.
Yeah, and
But they opted to do that. Like, that was really neat.
they've rarely done it again, and it looks so cool. And just like the way they threaded the needle with A's character, turning her from like a villainess into this like morally gray, tragic fail girl with what is still like my favorite animatic, which is her recounting her past with her sister. And that's when like they did such a good job like bringing the issues of the past of Conria, of the Cataclysm, into how it's affecting characters who are around to remember it. The loss that A went through. Just the fact that like the characters mentioned in random bits of lore across the region ended up being part of her story because they were friends that she had lost. It was like, boom, so good, so delicious.
The artifact description payoff for Rosie in the final fight as the Crimson Winged Flames.
Yeah, that was
great.
Yeah, like even Rosie had a full character arc that like most people would have never seen, and it was great.
Mm-hmm.
So cool.
And that was really fun to talk about in the early show too. Just like there was a lot of hints, and that was also like some of the best like lore, like background lore integration, a little bit.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I don't think they've. I still don't think they've really had it beaten. Like,
no.
There have been instances where arties have been like played into characters who we've already had like their past explained to them, like the Moosh, and then there have been arties that have like explained the motivations of World Quest characters, like in Narcissenkreuz. But I think that Rosie's is still probably like the best execution of that we've gotten so far.
Yeah, the closest we've ever like just barely scratching that was definitely the Narcissenkreuz stuff. Like, if they would let us get into everything that happened in the desert of Sumeru and not just banish it to like unvoiced world quests and books, that would be amazing. But we gave the game a lot of chances because of what it did for us in 2.1, and that definitely earns it the triple S Stunning Shade Chamber Selection tier.
Notably, also for this version, it introduced a couple of playable characters. One, our favorite L Taker, Kujo Sara.
Kujo Sara. Eating shit.
It also was the introduction of Aloy as a playable character in Genshin Impact.
Yeah.
First had the Sony crossover.
Our favorite.
Things that didn't happen.
It never paid off. Not once.
Who the fuck? All right. Next up.
That's a fun factoid.
That is a fun factoid.
It's just like super not important.
I couldn't tell you what patch she debuted at. And remember, that was a ploy to let Sony do crossplay on their own servers.
Mm-hmm.
And it worked, at least. So
right, because Lizard Squad hacked them a ton and Sony was super paranoid. That's the video game history leading up to that.
Exactly. So, 2.4. The Shade Chamber is lying in smitheroonies at the bottom of the ocean. We churls who were unfortunate enough to set our respawn point there are falling and splatting on the ground daily, every day. Shit's gotta stop. technically in lore, I don't know how we recorded the 2.1 discussion episode, considering we were just kind of taking numerous deaths every day. But
Eternalism.
Yeah, buddy.
We crafted a recording device that was impregnable to falling damage, and then we would attach a balloon to it before we hit the ground.
Yes.
And then we would grab it the next day.
Like
you said impregnable.
Like a cross between a yak bat and a black box for an airplane.
Exactly.
So the bitch gotta get back in the sky. And that's what happens in 2.4, which is like also the pre-Lantern Rite, or else it is Lantern Rite. Lantern Rite is very integrated with this Archon quest interlude.
I believe it was a direct lead-in, like it was the Archon quest and then right afterward.
So 2.4's Archon quest interlude. The rebuilding of the Shade Chamber. With the shit that's going on with Shenhe. Osial's wife comes back in and is a boss for one event that they never ever use again. And that's kind of crazy.
It's Osial's crazy wife.
It's Osial's crazy wife. Again, a bunch of shit happens with random lead-in. That's not really a great told story, but it comes together for a very cool finale and a very epic ending. And oh, what an epic ending it is, because of the probable reason why this is an AQ interlude and not just Shenhe's story quest. They paid out a lot of money to have a great Beijing soprano do a part as Yunjin, reinventing Beijing opera for us gaijin masses, and doing a bang-up job with the Divine Damsel of Devastation song.
Yeah.
Accompanying animatic.
I'm going to say I think 2.4 belongs in Actually Surprised Us.
Yeah, I would say that too.
Yeah.
I don't think it quite made it up to Stunning Shade Chamber selection, but it also had a lot of really good payoff for things. This was the second Lantern Rite event that they ever did, and it was a massive improvement over the first.
Yeah, it's kind of the first real Lantern Rite, because even though it's clear, because like one of the first videos they posted on the Genshin Impact YouTube channel was Xiao's cutscene from the Lantern Rite, the initial Lantern Rite. So even though they patched that one in 2020, I think it was around since 2018. They'd been planning that for a while, and somehow that Lantern Rite, I mean, we've said it before, but like we think it might have been COVID affecting it. They might not have like had their feet fully under the ground or on the ground yet, but it was like a weird beta that didn't matter and didn't have any of the playable characters in it. So this was the first real one. And granted, we're only talking about the AQs, but given the way that the AQ ended, I would actually almost say that it should be in Stunning Shade Chamber, because it was like one of Hoyo's best showings. Like
it was,
almost.
But even at the time when we recorded about it, we all expressed a lot of frustration with how much it dragged, like how Hoyo seems to skate on its endings.
Yeah,
and I don't want to reward them for that, even when the endings are very good.
I will say, one big note that we have talked about multiple times across the Shade Chamber, this was also the introduction of Ningguang's alternate outfit, and Beto's reaction to it.
Oh lord. Those characters fucked during the endings, during the completion screen. Those characters.
I think that's still the event.
It's a completion screen.
Yep, there is no other singular point in the Genshin story until 4.1 where you could point at some characters and be like, they're fucking right now.
Mm-hmm.
But that part was also in the event, because we also commented on how like they had that in a portion of the game that could be removed.
Yes.
Yeah.
Put the gay stuff in a temporary microcosm. Speaking of temporary microcosms, 2.6 brings us not only literally the best event in all of Genshin, the Iridori Festival, which we will not be evaluating 2.6 on. Instead, we're going to look at the Archon Interlude installment, or maybe it's a quest, whatever. It's an Archon something that happened in 2.6, which I like to call Part 1 of Chasm Hell. This is the one with Dainsleif and Halfdan. And this is where we learn that Hilly Churls want to die.
A whole half of Daniel.
Mm-hmm.
It's true.
I'm gonna say that this is probably. I'm gonna say this is probably an Actually Surprised Us. I don't feel like it.
No.
I hard disagree.
Really?
I'm sorry.
I was
No,
going to
I think
invite it
that-
to the banquet at best. At best.
I don't know. I think that the quests involved with the chasm that were not
We're
the
awesome.
Archon interlude, like the ones that involved, like, being trapped in an island with Itto and company,
Don't
like
worry,
those
that's coming
ones were
up.
kind of a drag.
That's coming up.
But oh wait, that was a separate patch.
Yep.
That was.
They wasted a lot of our
Oh.
time in the chasm. And
Yeah,
Oh, dang.
That was 2.7, I think.
2.6 was the Chasm Delvers, which was probably one of the best world quests that they had done at that time.
Mhm.
And Dainsleif's, which was way boring. So all that stuff
Yeah.
about, like, a couple of little mortals delving into the unknown, what's-her-face, Zhirchong overcompensating for herself out of envy for vision holders. We meet the stray Fatui company that is dying in there because the Qixing just closed the door on them in the chasm as retaliation for what happened in the Liyue AQ.
They died
also-
because of child.
Yeah.
Good for him.
The Season mage who, like, is dying down there and talks about her, like, fellow brother orphan and growing up at the House of the Hearth and how they used to play the balalaika. None of that counts for this discussion. We are just talking about Dainsleif, Halfdan, and the churls who want to die.
Yeah, I'm gonna still say this is their best showing for an intermission, which isn't saying a lot, but it is still their best.
I actually kind of disagree. I thought Caribert was better.
Really? I mean,
I actually disagree
with that.
conceptually,
I mean, Caribert
maybe, but-
was ruined by Caribert too. Yes. No, I won't defend that, but, like,
I think I still like this one a little bit better than even the initial Caribert introduction. I would argue invited to the banquet on this one. I don't think it.
was anyone
It-
surprised?
I
mean,
No.
was surprised to find out how much we wanted to die, but
I was
wasn't-
surprised
I
at
wasn't.
how
We're millennials.
little. I was
That's true.
surprised at how much they dragged out the chasm. Apparently,
Yeah,
All right, we'll invite it.
I will
Yeah.
say. I will say one thing working against it, from keeping it from getting to actually surprise us, is this was also the patch that introduced future fratricide victim Ayato Kamisato to the playable roster.
that actually lowered it in my estimation.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. That keeps it from being up there.
Every patch that Ayato appears in will be knocked down a tier until he dies, and then it will go right to stunning selection.
No, I don't think. So if we weren't reviewing, if we were reviewing patches that weren't the AQ, him being threatened with a gun was actually really funny.
Oh, that was peak.
Yeah,
That
that's
was
why that one would be rated a lot higher than the one
Yeah.
that was introduced
Yeah.
as supposedly interesting.
Maybe
Yeah.
some other time we will do the events. I think that would be fun.
Mhm,
That
For
would be
now.
fun.
for now.
Speaking of Chasm, it's time for
Abyssal,
Chasm
abyssal
2.
dog shit. Abyssal dog shit.
Fuck this patch.
So
Just
this,
call it
this
your
was
race.
another.
I want
So this
This-
was another AQ interlude.
Yes, it was an AQ interlude. That stupid ass went nowhere fucking cul-de-sac of Yelan, Yanfei, Itto, and Shinobu all getting stuck in a hole with us. And nobody... Also, Xiao is there and does the big cool rescue because, again, skating on that big ending cutscene, even though everything else
Yeah.
just sucks. Characters have negative chemistry. Everyone's fucking annoying. We don't even kind of, like, get fed for each character like the way that I think these ensemble stories are kind of meant to do.
Yeah.
And Yanfei,
Yeah.
no one can write Yanfei or Yelan to be interesting at all. They refuse. And Itto, despite having a great story quest, immediately becomes who we mostly know him for today, which is an insufferable jackass.
Yeah.
Wow,
I mean, Ito's
I
fun,
feel-
but I mean, like, it's definitely a case where it was like this was sort of supposed to be as serious as he got given the circumstances, and it was mostly dumb, and they were also mostly in this problem because of him as well,
Yeah.
which was also
Yeah, I
kind of
know-
frustrating.
I think that I like Itto a lot, and I don't mind the amount of time he's shown up because I think he's great. But this is definitely his worth showing. Like,
Yeah, well, see, the thing is, I like comedic Itto, but he's only ever comedic Itto, and this is where they could have had him be a little more serious.
yeah, this was his worth
and-
showing. No two ways about it.
Yeah.
So-
It works.
Doesn't that always how it goes, where the character's most lackluster showing is their most permanent appearance, and then like the stuff we really like them from is from events that are just gone.
Yeah.
This patch was the introduction of Kuki Shinobu, and I think that they wanted to integrate her into this Archon interlude to like introduce her to the story. But because of her position in the Ayato gang, she has to or not Ayato, God, already focused
Itto,
on
yeah.
Itto. The Itto's gang, they needed him to be there for it, which I think was a big misstep in how they use their characters.
Yes, I agree.
So yeah, Abyssal dog shit.
Our first Abyssal dog shit. We really
Not our
hated
last.
this one.
Although here's the thing, like I definitely hated this one way less than I hated Meropide. So I'm like, maybe we should make it an even lower category than Abyssal dog shit.
No.
Abyssal is for the ones that like really made us bad. And that will include Meropide.
We can have them both there.
All right.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
let's go to the
I
complete...
definitely hated this a lot less than Meropide.
Yeah.
Let's go to the complete opposite of that. 3.0.
Yep.
Fucking slapped.
Yep.
Absolutely charming.
All of Sumeru was such a pleasant surprise.
Mm-hmm. We got the introduction of Dendro as an element. We just got introduced to like still their best like region in terms of development influences used. Like
no, it had I want to say the best number of patch cycles in a row. Like looking ahead a little bit.
Yeah.
Like
yeah, for sure.
They were all so good. It just like, all right, the story going into the story of 3.0. Cyberpunk, academia, racism, time loops, reality-destroying simulations, a god who's also an AI pixie duende who's stuck in jail? What's going on? And also Dunyarzad making us cry and then not actually dying. It was awesome.
Yeah.
It was, Sumeru.
Love the time loop. Love the time loop. Love the 13 Sentinels ripoff mechanic. Love the interface screw when like you can't like that one option that you can choose just repeats itself because like you've been in the time loop forever and like reality is fake.
Yeah.
I think really
like,
intelligent writing too.
Yeah, no, this is also the one where I feel like they learned to kind of balance their AQ quests between like what they release in a patch, where it's like, oh, so the first quest is chasing down a USB key, and kind of getting to learn the characters through their engagement with that and finding out like what's going on with forbidden knowledge. And the second patch is there's a fucking time loop. Like, both of those are interesting for the setting because the first one really gets you around.
3.0.
Oh, yeah.
It's loaded.
Yeah.
But also just like a lot of intrigue, like what is forbidden knowledge followed immediately by also what is forbidden knowledge followed by okay, we're now dealing with like the academia who hates us and hates all art students. And also like Nahida just showing up as your buddy because you've already met her in a previous loop, but you haven't dealt with her yet, which is also like look, at this point we've had Venti, he's a drunk, he's a lush, you know. Zhongli, who is actively sort of not helpful and also colluded with the Fatui, just throwing that out there.
And responsible for us losing our respawn point for a year.
A, who, you know, whoops us and then needs emotional support. And then you have Nahida, who's like just like shows up and is like not only like immediately helpful, but also trying to kind of like guide you at like Aether, Lumine, and the player at the same time to like the end of the conclusion of like what's going on with the Sub-Zero's festival. And it's just such a different vibe from her than all the other Archons. Like, she's the one who, weirdly enough, seems like the, you know, outside of big shows of power, which A was pretty good for, is like the one that seems the most like Archon Lee at that point. Like, she's like a weird little Yoda helping you.
Yeah, she's like a weird little god living in the Matrix. I think just like the level of like bullshit fantasy concepts was perfect. It was just enough to add intrigue without like bang you over the head with a bunch of like arcane stuff that wasn't really a factor before or after, like trying to figure out what was happening in the dream loop.
was really exciting, especially when they give you, like, I think good clues to piece together, like the fact that, like, Deia's muscle memory can still remember the fight that she has every loop. And so her body is subconsciously aware of this, so we know that it's not like a real-time reset, that, like, there are experiences that are being accumulated.
Well, also the scale of it is, like, you actually spend, like, 3 months in the time loop of, like, that time. Like the characters are not in there for a short period, at least from their perspective.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. So definitely, I think 3.0 belongs in Stunning Shade Chamber selection. I think I don't know how controversial this is going to be, but I think 3.1 belongs there too.
Really?
Yeah.
I was actually going to say that's like a step down by 1.
Yeah.
Like,
here's my argument. 3.1 was the introduction we got to the desert. So that was when we really started getting into a lot of the themes, like, more directly of Sumeru in terms of the inequality between the different classes and groups there. We got to learn a little bit more about the history of, like, the desert region with, like, King Deshret, and we were introduced to Sino as a playable character. I think that, like, that section of the Archon quest as well contributed a lot to the things we enjoyed about Sumeru and the things that we explored a lot more talking about it.
I hard disagree.
Interesting.
My feeling at that time of playing was, wow, the desert is really underutilized in this AQ. And I thought that, like, the Golden Slumber is, like, what would maybe really fall in love with the desert. I mean, aside from the fact that it was pretty and all the enemies were hot. But I don't think Sino was that well utilized in the AQ. I did like gaslighting a woman. That was fun.
We did gaslight a woman.
That's true.
I don't think I was that surprised or, like, blown away by it, because I knew, like, the big part of 3.1 is, like, Scaramouche's crybaby sad backstory, which, like, we knew was gonna happen because we read that artifact set, the Fatui artifact set.
Yeah, Husk of Opulent Dreams. Please, our precious little meow meow.
And he's like, oh, I'm sad, my mom don't love me, and, like, you're a freak.
Well, 3.1 was also the introduction of, like, Dottore in the
Yeah,
region.
Dottore.
Like,
That's
our villain and our
Oh, really?
stakes.
Yeah.
He wasn't in 3.0?
No, he wasn't.
Oh, it's because of the Fatui trailer that I, like, had him in my brain anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, so he shows up there.
No, yeah. I would say that his introduction in 3.1 is probably the strongest point of it for me.
You know, actually, I'm sorry, go ahead.
With all those brainwashed people.
Like,
that was cool. It does drag a little bit when you get to Izak, although Izak does pay off stupendously in 3.2.
Yeah. I would still put this above their average, I think, because I feel like even when it dragged, it was still a lot more. I would say it was generally more interesting, even when it dragged, than when Genshin is on average.
Yeah. It's absolutely no lower than Banquet.
Yeah.
So the thing is that I was going to say, initially it's like, okay, but between 3.0, 3.1, and 3.2, like, spoilers, 3.2 goes, like, right there at the top coming up. But I was going to be like, well, 3.1 is the dip between them. And if it was all as one, they would all go in, like, the very top there.
Yeah, and it feels like a dip.
Like, below it. But here's the thing, right? That might actually just be because the ending pop-off wasn't as good. Granted, there are some, like, parts that I don't remember super well, like the hospital, like, and why we had to go there, because that was, like, the scholars going there because of forbidden knowledge, and the Deshret stuff doesn't really... It gets followed up a lot on in Sumeru in general, but it doesn't get followed up on within the Archon quests. Like, they fully drop it from there.
Right.
But, I wasn't going to put it, like, as high as, like, S tier for the extra credit the other parts of it are pulling, but I'm like, well, you can't really have that ending without it, and the setup for, like, Dottore and a lot of the earlier parts were pretty high.
It is the best middle section they've ever done, for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't know. We'll get to it later, but I do have feelings about what's the best 2-point patch.
Okay.
Or 0.2 patch later.
2 patch.
Okay.
All right, so...
We want to say that it goes and actually surprised us.
Yeah, that's what I would put it as.
Okay.
All right. And 3.2, easy. Boom.
Easy.
Undisputably goated.
Yeah.
That's SAS, the best AQ Sumeru.
No,
fucking golden.
On that like tier, that completely separate, like, like what's your favorite game list thing, I think that's the image I use to represent Genshin, because that's it at its best.
Yes.
Yeah.
That chat, like that entire chapter is really, really good.
Everything paid off. Everything paid off.
Yeah.
Just fantastic.
Yeah, best payoff they've ever had.
Oh god, that's the first time they ever use other playable characters to tell an AQ. Like the part when you switch to Nilou to dance, like gave me goosebumps.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's so cool.
Yeah. It's weird. Again, it's weird what rules Hoyo imposes on themselves with that stuff. Like they could have done that the entire time, but they only chose to do it there.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know why they think we
And
want to
it
be
helps
our
the quality
twin.
of writing, because the camera's not just following the traveler as a problem solver for everything. It's actually saying, hey, the ensemble's really important, which in a game where they're trying to sell you on all the characters is important.
Exactly. Traveler
exactly.
doesn't even fucking talk.
So I think
everything from the lead up to the big showdown to even just the epilogue and the victory lap was pitch perfect. All the characters, you get to see Kaveh for the first time. You find out that Sataria is going to start a school in the desert and start reconciling all the bad stuff that happened there. And it's like
we get the first mention of Descenders, which was a concept that
Oh,
we
yeah.
had been introduced to previously.
We get number A, letter A, whatever. Oh no, wait, that's Alice. Okay, I don't remember the one who talks to you, who sounds like Yai at the end, and she's like,
That was Nicole, right?
That was N.
That was
Yeah,
N.
it was Nicole.
Captain N, the game mistress.
The game.
You can tell from her accent necklace that's a Nicole.
Wait, was N in 3.2 or was she in 3.3? Because that's when we did the time fuckery.
Oh.
No, she was in. Oh, wait.
No, she was in both, wasn't she?
I don't remember.
I don't remember
You have to
either.
wait for that scene with the house.
Yeah.
It's
Okay, then
it's 3.3.
It must have been 3.3, because that was where we actually start fucking with the time stuff.
Yeah.
3.3, really good. That was Mr. Moosh
Also
Man's.
goated. I would put it right at the top too.
Yeah, I'd put it right at the top.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
It was
reluctant
really
to, but I can't really say why not.
I
It's pretty sick. I do like how
I basically forget everything outside of Scaramouche, but the Scaramouche stuff we did 2 whole episodes on.
it kind of it is
Yeah.
it is their best
Interlude.
it's their best interlude that deals with the overall plot, because the way you get into Irminsul's stuff, and it was like, these are the constraints of Irminsul. It was coming right after Ruka Devata and her erasure from Irminsul, and this is like, okay, that worked because of this. This other thing doesn't work because of that. We're establishing some ground rules for like the tenuous reality on which our world stands.
Yeah.
And we're following a little stinky boy throughout the whole thing. How fun. This is where we get Scarammeow, because Nahida writes herself an allegory that will survive the retcon. Which also means this is where we get terrifying Penguin Dottore in the fox suit.
Yeah, that thing.
And I just had a lot of fun making episodes in this run of Genshin. It was just rife with discussion. The way they integrated Buddhism was just so sick. And of course, we got to name the Stink Man and put him in our party. I do apologize for lying in that episode, saying that I was going to name him Tech Rat. I immediately thought of Germa, and Germa was way funnier. So in that respect, I'm actually not sorry at all.
Yeah, I think that run of Archon quests was like some of the best writing Genshin has ever done, so definitely deserved all those places. Which leads us into 3.5 and the Caribert.
3.5 is Caribert. I actually liked Caribert. I liked it way better than the Chasm Dainsleif thing.
It was definitely better than the Chasm Dainsleif thing. I still didn't like it as much as other Sumeru era writing. I think it felt really
Give me
slow.
a moment, my computer's roboting.
Okay. It was definitely uneven. I'm reading through the plot summary and how it starts out with Kaya. It barely does anything with him. and then him and Dainsleif just kind of fuck off, and you do the Caribert like time loop thing. I guess like I like the story of Caribert. I love getting a little tidbits of Hilichurl lore, but
well, let me ask you this: how much of that was the body of the quest, and how much of it was the ending reveal?
it was just the ending.
Okay, we can't give them points for that.
No.
We've already established that as a precedent.
No, and like I'm trying to think of the other lore drops that happened in that installment, and like I don't remember. Like we see the first Abyss Order guy like go in and talk to the evil crystal. I don't care about an evil crystal.
Yeah, we outside of like seeing him react to the Abyss and like learning that Kaya was related to him, there's not a lot of like lore drops outside of that.
So, Caribert. I dislike Caribert.
Damn, am I the only person going to bat for Caribert at all?
No, I think it's the second best interlude that they did, but again, not a high bar.
No, yeah, I'll agree to that.
Yeah, it's it feels like, okay, straight up, it feels like too little, too late. Like, I know that it was introducing some intrigue, but the problem is by that point, I'd played the game long enough to know that interludes are just going to waste time, and I didn't expect anything from it, and I really didn't get anything. Like, it's like, okay, there's like the interesting things about it. The broken mirror, Caribert, who I do feel sorry for as a character, and oh, there's the voice of the Abyss Order, and like I don't care about anything else. Like that's it. It's really not a lot.
Yeah, I think on revisiting it, I was like, all right. That might have been the one where they actually did trick me with an ending that was better than anything else in the quest.
I mean, it's fine, but like the problem is
I would actually
coming
not
off
say
of
it's fine. I would say that it's actually like pretty garbage.
Well, no, I would say that if it weren't coming off of the the early 3-point series AQs, in which there were like so many revelations just in terms of like how Irminfell works, and like, just like having the characters interact in ways that was so significant, like it would have come across as a lot better if it hadn't been at the tail end of that. And I'm like, okay, well, we have a little bit more insight, but even in terms of what we learn about like the Abyss Order leadership, it's like, well, we didn't actually even really learn anything. We learned that we learned that they have
saw some
other
stuff
leader.
Happen.
And actually, it's almost worse with Natlan, because like a big problem with Natlan is that like the Abyss Order has no notable leadership besides the two. You know?
Yeah. The only Abyss character we care about is Enjo.
I think I would have rated this higher if we actually got to see what was under Caribert's mask, but I just don't think the revelations that came out of it were interesting enough to warrant a very high spot on the tier list.
Well,
I'm gonna say I think
we can agree on one thing. At least it's not Meropide.
Yeah.
At least it's not Meropide.
I'm not sure if I would put it that low. I might put it a little bit higher. It's somewhere between Invited to the Banquet, and at least it's not Meropide for me.
Yeah.
I like it where it is.
Okay. We can leave it there. Speaking of Meropide...
So, are you ready for the whiplash? Are you ready for, like, the roller coaster? The thing that, like, made us not like Genshin as much? First of all, boom. No question.
Yeah, actually, that's actually what makes the next part even harder to deal with.
Yes.
Yeah.
Second part, boom. No question.
Yeah.
And that's what really hurts, that free fall.
Yeah, that was the thing that like made us all reevaluate Genshin as a game for a bit.
It's high, the temperature fluctuation, rapid temperature fluctuation will make you sicker than a constant of either temperature. And my neck still hurts from the quality whiplash from 4.0 to 4.1.
We got the bends from descending and then ascending so quickly afterwards.
And at the risk of complaining about the same stuff we've complained about for the last year, I think the update is with Natlan, it's pretty clear part of the patch delay, like where they're not just doing the AQ in a straight line, is probably to avoid that problem again. I don't think anyone on their side looked at that internally and liked it. Like, how could you, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't think that Hoyo, was patting themselves on the back and saying, like, that was a good job. Like, marketing will, of course, always be like, the next patch is the hypest patch.
Yeah.
But, like,
yeah, and
like,
Dawe will come out
though,
and vomit whatever he wants to say at us.
Yeah,
about how much
prison escape. Yeah, like boy, a prison escape. That sure is original. It's like, I mean, it would be if one, we had escaped prison, and two, or infiltrated. If it felt like we were infiltrating at all instead of just like going and doing like horrible.
Why couldn't we have actually escaped? That would have been cool as hell if we got thrown in prison instead of like, I'm going to give you a fake crime and you're going to sneak in, and I'm so sympathetic. Like, come on, man.
But yeah, I mean,
they tried to kill us twice. Like, come on.
We are notably not seeing them repeat this by introducing a location and an Archon quest and further story in the same patch. I'm like, I really think it's because of that. I think something horrifically blew up inside of there. I think Meropide was a zone that some environmental designers lovingly put together with the idea of possibly populating it with content, and then they didn't.
Yep.
And they just spent the entire patch fucking wasting our time. Yep. And I think they regret it.
Yes. So the main question is, where does 4.2 go? 4.2 had some amazing shit. It also had some dog shit. And above all, it suffered because of Meropide, not just because of our goodwill being completely, like, flushed down the toilet of the Primordial Sea, but also because so much of 4.2 felt fucking rushed.
Yeah, no, it did as well as it could do, I think, in the context, which is to say, following up the abysmal dog shit that was 4.1. Yeah. I would say it's probably invited to the banquet because, it's just clear middle of the road. What they did well, they did really well, but that doesn't make up for just the pace that need to be at a breakneck speed to make up for nothing happening in 4.1.
Yeah,
and the quality of it was just so shoddy because Whiplash occurred throughout 4.2. This is great. This is awful. This is amazing. This is fucking dog shit. Like,
yeah. Though the one thing we can say about it is, like, it's not in its current ranking because it was mediocre. It's in its current ranking because it was inconsistent.
Yeah, it averaged out to at least being invited. I would invite everyone except Focalor to the bank.
Exactly.
Even Skirk gets to go, I guess.
And now, speaking of dog shit, finally, an interlude so bad, even the IQ swill of the rest of the Genshin fandom sat up and took notice. 4.7 is offensive for how fucking much of a waste of time it was. It was terrible. It was
Dainsleif didn't even stay the entire time. He left midway through it.
Even he knew it was bad. Even he knew it was fucking trash.
It was just a garbage lore dump that went nowhere.
Yeah, and then, like, shit got retconned. Like, why? I didn't, like, listen, Caribert was my favorite part of Caribert. I didn't fucking care enough about him to see him get Caribert too. I did not give a shit. I don't give a shit about NPCs dying, like, beautifully anymore. I'm an old woman, and I'm waiting for results. God damn it.
Yeah, contrary to what Mulani's quest is saying, results do occasionally matter.
Yes.
Exactly.
When you're telling a fucking story. Good God. And here's the pisser. Like, I've said this before. The easiest fix in the world that would have fixed 4.7, I think it's called Bedtime Story, like, what would have fixed that interlude and also fixed one of the worst parts of 4.2 is that's where we should have met Skirk. We should have met Skirk at the interlude and left the whale on, like, a mystery cliffhanger. We didn't need Skirk to come in and, like, deflate the momentum of the entire AQ at the end of 4.2. Like, instead we could have, like, just started working with her together on some weird little thing in 4.7, and that would have felt more expansive, and then she could have name-dropped all of her, like, stupid friends from the Abyss, and at least that would have felt like, alright, they're lining up this thing, and not at the expense of the stuff that actually happened in Fontaine.
And you know what? You know what? And the other thing about that is that also would have been good. I mean, no, sorry. It's not even that also would have been good, but if we're looking at 3.2 to 3.3, they'd already done a format similar to that. Like,
Yeah.
we're still dealing with the Lord of Arcane Wisdom in 3.3, even though the real version of that thing is dead at that point. So it's like, it's okay to double dip on world bosses if you need more time to expand on them a little bit, you know? Like, you've set a precedent for that beforehand, and I don't know why it would matter seeing that at the end of goddamn the flooding and everything. It did completely deflate the momentum. And honestly, even though I'm still of the opinion that by launching Furina's character quest in that patch, that it was kind of a pretty suitable epilogue to her character, we did lose out on Furina and Nouvellette scenes where they like at least pat Furina on the back and say good job, for everything you did, right?
Or even something, even if they just ended up being strained, like it was nothing. I think that's why in good conscience, I personally don't subscribe to either one of Furina's most prominent ships, including Furina and Nouvellette, because he doesn't care that much about her, as we've seen by how he just dropped her like a brick at the end of 4.2, which I thought was terrible and not really good for either of their stories.
Yeah, and even if he has some nice things to say to her during her character quest and is encouraging her there, it's like, well, this should have been moved to when she was at her emotional lowest, because you might not play Furina's character quest right after 4. See, we actually had two reactions to this amongst the churls, because I played her character quest immediately afterward because I agree that she did not get the correct resolution in her plot line, and I said I want to see the resolution, so I played it immediately. A lot of other people, I think it was that was me and Jur, and then but Beefy and Wander, both of you waited because you were like, man, that was a little BS, and it was for the exact same reaction where you're like, I don't really want to go back in immediately. So, and I don't know, maybe if they had removed the Skirk scene and moved it to the later art, the later interlude, because that's what we're talking about, that could have helped. They might not have given Furina another scene in 4.2, but at the very least, Skirk wasted time. Skirk, I mean, Skirk was annoying.
Yeah, and the changing of the guard from it not only just an Archon to the next ruler god, but an Archon to a sovereign itself is an extremely interesting situation. And regardless of how the outcome would have been and how they felt about each other, I wanted to see it. I wanted them to reflect on what a incredibly an unprecedented moment this is, and instead it just gets swept under the crazy shitty momentum of 4.2.
And now we're at the new stuff.
Now we're at
the stuff we haven't talked about on the channel yet. A little sneak peek for a future episode. In fact, this could even almost be qualified as our first discussions on it, besides some of the stream stuff.
Just for you members, because we love you guys so much.
These will be our first officially archived words about the Natlan AQ. And
granted, our opinions might still change by the end, because we do like to look at these as package deals. But while we're in the middle of it, while we're in the shocking middle of 5.2, because Meropide was so bad,
which we don't talk about.
We haven't finished the story yet.
And we don't talk about the AQs halfway through on policy. That is our season break, so you guys are getting a real special extra little treat here.
It's true. So jumping right into 5.0, I'm going to make a consideration, and then y'all can agree or disagree.
Alrighty.
I think 5.0 belongs in Actually Surprised Us, because I think there were some things in there that they did that were interesting, especially regards to, Kachina's whole journey and everything, but I don't think it pushed new or great enough to warrant really being pushed higher than that.
I'll second that.
Then why would
it? I actually heard that. I did actually like it. I think that there is a characterization.
Why wouldn't it be Banquet though?
Because
I think.
No, because. Oh God.
Because Banquet is our fine. And I thought it was fine.
I did initially get really hyped for it. I thought the new region is great. They did a lot of really cool things with it. I genuinely liked the introduction to Natlan. I just didn't think it was mind-blowing enough to be worthy of.
But this isn't even the new region. This is
No,
from the
but even
get-go of
even
the
within the
AQ.
context of that, they actually framed a conflict appropriately.
Yeah.
Like a character was trapped in hell. Like,
And we had to
Yeah.
save her. Yeah.
And
yeah.
we saved
see,
her
like,
with like 4 of the most boring people imaginable, and then 2 pop fist bumps Mualani.
Tupac did fist bump Mualani. I will remind you, you freaked the fuck out when that character was introduced. Like, that was the hypest shit.
I was hyped because
Yeah.
of the talking stick lore, which I was let down on terribly. The talking stick lore does not, in fact, allude to the Power Rangers.
Yeah, that was
Yeah,
very
but I
true.
mean, I'm disappointed by that one.
No, okay, but between
Yeah, for-
Kakitano's introduction, properly framing like a going to hell quest, like however you might feel about Natlan being like Nation of War, where it's a war against the Abyss, the most boring faction, at least they're featured in the plot appropriately at this point. They're not
Yeah.
just ignored.
But
Like,
here's the
I-
thing. I wouldn't rank 5.1 higher than Actually Surprised us, and I thought it was better than 5.0.
I do think it was better than 5.0, but I think I think the degree of difference between them is minimal.
I just wasn't that surprised by 5.0.
okay, this is
I wasn't even
the
that
name
surprised
of
by
the tier.
5.1. I'm rounding up.
This is, I mean, I feel like this is the name of the tier that we've like named it, like being not deceptive, but like wagging the dog a little bit. There's nothing about 5.0 that surprised me. I think that it was just one where they brought everything together in a way that was above average for what they normally do. Like,
That's
I would
why I
agree.
would say Banquet, because that's our B.
no, Banquets are C.
No, it goes S, A, B, C, D.
Right, but our
Oh,
middle standard. Our middle standard.
Yeah,
is
well then, yeah,
Banquet.
I'd still say it's our. I would still say it would be above Banquet.
Yeah.
I'm not happy about it.
Break. Hold on. Break. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's okay. So this is a tricky one for me because the thing is that okay, so all of the new regions always have the benefit of kind of being in the upper tiers already on the patch in which they're launched because they need to sort of have like a pretty decent setup for the story. I, broadly speaking, have actually thought the level of consistency for Natlan has been overall higher than the consistency for, like, Fontaine. And part of that is also because they're taking a slower patch cycle. They seem like they've learned their lessons. The gameplay is better, but we're not talking about gameplay. And the quality of writing, at least for, like, getting characters over, is pretty good. So the thing is that, like, broadly speaking, I actually think it was a pretty stellar patch, but that also means I now have to only talk about the problems I have with it, which is it's really nice to finally have a plot line where the Abyss matters outside of the interludes and where it's not a like third thing that's related to the region. Like the flood, well, actually really Vache and the flood in Fontaine, because Vache was a devious fucking villain. Like he affected plot lines outside of like even when he was dead. He fucked up the region so badly.
Yeah.
That like
every
he still
patch had
affected
something
things.
that tied back to Vache. Every patch of Fontaine.
Yeah.
Like right
And
down
I
to
thought it was
Seawind.
like he kept showing up months after his patch was over, and I think it was like pretty ingenious having him be the Phoenix Wright case like villain at the start that was later used to explain what the primordial seawater would do to everyone, so it turned it into an environmental thing. Point is, the environmental thing of Fontaine was one thing, and I think that Vache being the face of it initially before it turned into an esoteric problem helped. And I think that the academia having like control over Irminsul and being a force also helped. So while I enjoy the Abyss coming back, they suck. Like, they already burned Enjo on the Scions of the Canopy quest, and he says in his own words that he's like a middle manager, so like if they have leadership, he's not very high up on the totem pole. And it's not like one other thing, I have not played the end of 5.1. I know that the war happens, I know that NPCs die, I know that Chaska's sister dies, but that's neither here nor there. I haven't played it, and I haven't played 5.2. I do not yet know if the Abyss Twin pops out and is like, now Natlan mine or anything, right? But I'm like, the Abyss is faceless. The Abyss has no one, you know? And like I said, they already burned Enjo, and he's already said he's not important. You know, maybe, you know, my opinion will maybe change later. But the Abyss, I like that they're using them, but they suck. And I wish they didn't suck because, like, oh, they've finally been spotlighted. Only
they had 4 years to
aren't...
make sure they didn't suck, and they failed.
Yeah, that's an issue, right? And I like Mualani, and I like, you know, Kinik, and I like Chaska, you know, and I like Kachina, you know, but that's just it. It's like I like them. And now we're at such a point in Genshin where characters feel formulaic. So it doesn't feel weird anymore that you can just get on board with them really, really quickly. But that's also a problem, you know, like we're continuing sort of the same room temperature. So the thing is, if I'm judging this based on the very beginning of the game, this goes into like actually surprised us, or even like, you know, based on where we're looking like with like 1.0, this is like leagues and bounds ahead of, you know, where it's been, but it hasn't quite hit the same highs with it.
Yeah.
Which I don't think that's unfair to the Archon quest, because we had to play all of the, we didn't have to, you can skip to it, but we played all of the Archon quests prior to it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So it's like this is pretty average for them, even though it's a strong showing for the beginning of the region. They're not really pushing the envelope any further than they have before.
Yeah, I mean, I agree on that, but I'm like, if I look at 2.0 and I look at 5.0, I like, if we look at what we've already put up in the actually surprised us tier, I'm like, I don't necessarily think that like. I think that 5.0 to me feels like it did comprehensively better than like a 4.2 or a 1.1. Like, I would still, like, with all of that in mind, I would still put it a little bit higher than Invited to the Banquet.
I would almost put it higher than the Banquet, but I mean, like, and again, you know, we're kind of like, you know, noodling on if actually surprised us is like, you know, the real name of it or not. I'm certainly going back and forth on it, but like nothing it did was like crazy surprising yet. You know what I mean?
It's kind of, I just like, it's the least I've been excited for the start of a new AQ since like Liyue. I think it's better than Liyue.
How much of that is the contents of the AQ, and how much of that is all of the shit surrounding it? Like,
yeah. Like how much
I will say, like, I will never complain about the characters in the Fontaine AQ. They immediately had like rich inner worlds. They like, I was intrigued and I cared about all of them by the end, and most of them by patch 1. Natlan has failed to do that for me. I think everyone's boring as fuck. And I don't think they rise to the heights of a story about war. Like, this is a little preview for something that I know I'm going to talk about when we talk about the full AQ, but like, there is a way to do a straightforward and like quote-unquote bland, like, good versus evil war story. It can be done because Lord of the Rings did it, and it made Lord of the Rings did it by like showing the characters' uncertainties, and like, they don't have to get over their moral standing because they know they're on the side of right, but they have to get over themselves and their personal failings. And no one in Natlan has any personal failings. They're all enthusiastic. I mean, they don't get
what you described was literally what Kachina went through.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I won't say it wasn't particularly memorable, but that is what the game literally did.
I guess, like, it's just her, though, because 5.1 is when shit really hits the fan.
Right,
and
that's what we're saying.
People
is like
barely break their stride.
But 5.0 was the Kachina story. 5.0 was the good part of that character development that you're asking for. It didn't carry over into 5.1, but 5.1
yeah, unfortunately,
in other ways.
Is it even character development if they then like throw her in the locker after that leg of the
AQ? But they actually, that's just chapter writing. Yeah, like the story actually does have to split between characters, like her, and that's true of all of them.
Yeah, I don't mean her dying. I mean like her kind of becoming like a non-important entity.
No, right, but that's what
No,
I'm
but
saying.
that's what I'm
Her
saying,
character
like-
journey was over at that point, so they didn't.
Yeah, like,
utilize
and that's true of a lot of different patches. Most of the patches give character focus to one set of characters in one patch, and then by and large move on to another set in the subsequent patches.
Mhm.
Like, it
The
sucks.
thing
It's
is,
not great writing, but
even though I don't think it escapes from the banquet, I still think it's like the upper part of the banquet. Like I don't think it's like fully going into like actually surprised us, but I'm like, I don't have anything like besides what like I said about it. I don't really have anything else wrong with it. It's all like really competently done.
I think the scene where the Archon comes back from hell saying, "I couldn't find her," alone gives
That is really funny.
That is really funny.
I think
Yeah.
that pushes it. Like that was a shock and was funny enough. Like writing from their point, like we don't always get that kind of humor from them. I think that.
Do you think it was intentional though?
I don't.
I mean, it doesn't
think
matter. We
so.
still laughed.
We still
Yeah.
laughed.
We had a good time.
I think it still belongs in Actually Surprised Us. But
yeah, I don't think we're gonna reach a conclusion. I mean, I think it sounds like we're pretty evenly split, but
do we want to round up or down with these?
I mean, here's the thing: as someone who's putting it in and invited to the banquet, I would actually round up for it. But you know, I've said my piece on it. Like, you know, it's going to end up on the list in a certain order. But I just, you know, everything I said is how I feel.
Yeah.
Yeah. Here's a little secret. I would put all of these rest of the guys in the banquet.
Well, we can discuss those.
yeah, let's talk about them now then.
All right, and
But
feel free to
first-
talk spoilers. I've only played the first half of 5.1, which I've not felt strongly about, but I also know that I'm not at what is clearly the best and most ambitious part of it yet. I know what that part is, but I haven't played it yet. So I'm pretty much out for this part of the discussion, but I will chime in when I...
Yeah, let's
relates
sort
to it a
5.0
little bit.
before we move on though.
Alright, we will provisionally put 5.0 in Surprised Us.
Okay.
With
It may drop. It may drop.
Full
between now and
understanding,
when we
it may
discuss
drop.
The full, between now and when we discuss the full Archon quest. But
Yeah,
And actually,
like
now that
for
I think
future
about it-
Archon quests plan sour, Eddie.
yeah.
yeah, and actually now that I think about it, I don't know if I would put 5.1 above it anyway.
I actually, during that discussion, Break made a lot of good points about, like, just kind of the arcs of things, and
Yeah,
Jared
like-
brought it up too. I think 5.1
No-
does belong in the banquet.
None of that
I-
none of that shit with Kachina happened in 5.1, which is when we wanted that the most. 5.1 was like very innovative. It was very innovative, and by that I mean the last quarter of it was very innovative. God, like I would put it in not Meropide if not for the fact that I was so charmed by how they did the war sequence. Not that I even thought it was good, because we know already by now Genshin is a game where playables don't die and NPCs do. So we already kind of knew like where the chips were stacked for the battle, and we anticipated it. And they didn't make us care about any of the Natlan NPCs anyway, except for Atea, who is gonna die anyway because of her condition.
But they did a good job of showing at least scale when it
Yeah,
came to this one.
that was
whereas
really
in
cool.
the Inazuma story, we were supposed to be in a
Yeah.
battle and ended up fighting 5 guys. So, like...
Yeah. I will still hold that my personal opinion is that 5.1 is the best second act patch they've done. I would personally put it above 3.1. But I don't feel I won't fight for it nearly as much. I was primed to dislike Auroron and Grandma Sweetie, and they were able to get one over on me, at least in terms of making me find them tolerable to all right.
I was
so I will give
primed
them
to
credit
love
for that.
Grandma Sweetie, and they overused her, and I was like, you're kind of a shittier Farazan, and I love a crone. I love a drunk crone, and I love a mean crone, and somehow Sitlali just didn't work for me.
I
Yeah.
was charmed by both of them. They won me over.
I do like I do think the one thing they have over a lot of other characters is at the very least they have like a familial. Well, I say other characters, but I'm like that sort of parent-child familial relationship.
Yeah, that was
pretty cool.
nice.
I'm like
that is something
and
we
yeah,
don't
granted, it's Hoyo. They still did the cowardly thing. Sitlali is 12 or something.
Yeah, physically like 12 years
yeah,
old.
but I mean, at the very least, at the very least, the relationship was sold as like, you know, a grandma and her grandson, and I think that does help because we actually haven't seen any sort of like parental bonds in the game.
And the relationship
besides Cloud Retainer, who we had a long runway for.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the touching story of an estranged father and his son, as I had canon Capitano and Aurora.
They ended up being buddies, and I like how they ended up being like incidental buddies. Like it was something that they just kind of like fell into. You know,
he feels like Capitano feels like he has almost some kind of obligation to Auroron, and I don't know if that's extrapolated from his duty, his self-perceived duty to Natlan as a whole, or just because Auroron is his son, just like Riku is Mickey's son. In Kingdom Hearts.
Exactly.
No, completely.
Exactly.
They even look exactly the same.
They do.
True.
Oh, sorry. Go on.
Oh, that idea is hideous.
I think I'm going to agree with Jur on this one. I think 5.1 actually does belong a step higher, and I would argue it's mostly because of the Power Rangers combination during the fourth fight.
Yeah, I think that Natlan does have its moments. Like, I'll agree that I think that the Fontaine characters were characters that I individually cared about more.
But you know what else had moments? 1.1.
But like
2.6,
but like
4.2.
Did they?
No, 4.2. Okay, 4.2 is peaks and valleys.
Oh yes.
But like, shoot, now I lost my train of thought. God. Sorry. Well, I mean, like, coming back to it, like, as much as the Abyss is still, like, a faceless void that doesn't really, like, have any real leadership or characters associated with, or even really all that much intrigue surrounding it, like, I bought that there was an actual conflict on a war scale this time, which is more than I can say for 2.0. Like,
Yeah.
And, like, I think that in terms of plot advancement, like, they resolved the issues... Sorry, rather than trying to cram the war and all of the character significance into, like, that Mavuika has to deal with into one patch, they did the war as one patch, and then the next patch is likely just going to be, like, hopefully Capitano and Mavuika focused. My point is that, like, it feels like they're organizing their stories smarter than they once did.
That's not even true, though, because 5.1, like, entirely was front-loaded by, like, you know, one good scene with Auroron and Citlali, but then, like, repeated ad nauseum. And like,
I was talking about in the context of revolving the setting with, like, Mavuika. Like, they didn't try to do the war and have their touching character moment with the Archon in one quest.
They've had,
like, it's not all going to be back-ended.
They've had, like, 2 bad touching character moments with her, though. Because she did her memory walk at the end of 5.1 as well.
Yeah, but those were fine. Those weren't terrible. Those didn't make me dislike her.
It just dragged.
They just dragged on a lot.
I mean, a little bit. Not even that much. It was like 2 minutes.
It was
I will say this from
8 million minutes.
I know that 5.2, and Jur, feel free to correct me if you don't feel this way, but it seems to me that, Jur, you have been most excited about Genshin in a long time, starting with 5.1. 5.1.
I mean, yeah, I'm not sure if that's saying a lot, though. It's Genshin. Like,
fair enough.
I think that the gameplay segment was exciting. I think the gameplay segment demonstrated that they're working with scale a lot better than they once did.
Yeah.
Like even in terms of framing it as, like, versus the Abyss, like, it's kind of better than doing a civil war because, like, MiHoYo has proven time and time again that they're not willing to commit to making any characters too unsympathetic. So we were never going to get a nation where people were seriously fighting against each other. And for that matter, I didn't want to have that. Like, do you realize how many plots are the mom, dad, the tribe, they're fighting again? No.
Yeah.
that is true.
That is
Like,
true.
it's actually a little bit refreshing
Yeah,
that
like-
Natlan is not just uniting all the tribes. And granted, that is because it's MiHoYo like throwing the dart and painting the board around it in terms of their usual
Yeah.
writing style.
Yeah.
But I am
But-
glad that it's more like, let's learn about these tribes and not have to like.
But there's nothing to learn
Deal
about
with,
them. They're
like,
fucking
internal-
boring. And like
No.
I don't care if the tribes don't fight. I actually love that sport is a proxy for war because that's extremely Mesoamerican. And like that was the cool part of 5.0. But
There is important things to learn about the tribes, though, like their positions on the
Oh,
right to
yeah.
die.
that's true.
Oh,
That's true. We know
that was the worst.
we,
Sorry, that-
we know that
my turn to be a
Kenichi's tribe is
hyper-contrarian.
anti-euthanasia.
I loved what happened to that dino.
No!
Oh, how could you?
He
Because
deserves
it was
to
like,
be at
it was like
peace.
fucked up, but in a way where it's like, this isn't my culture kind of way.
God.
Yeah.
No.
I'm aware that I'm being contrarian by saying that, but like I was like, well, you guys figured out what worked for you guys per the rules you set out on this. So,
Yeah. I mean, I guess the
break.
cap off my argument.
That
I know
would be
this
like
is-
you refusing to kill Radon in Elden Ring, and then like double refusing to kill him in Erdtree. You're like, this is cool. He could stick around. We don't need to have a cool funeral party for him. He could be a fucked up husk forever, controlled by dark forces beyond his reckoning.
yeah,
And his brother.
It's fucked up. It's fucked up, but I'm like, well, you guys set out a situation where you said he's sacred, we can't do anything to him, but we also don't want to kill him either. So why not settle for the middle ground, am I right?
I would have killed him in secret and violated the Prime Directive.
Yeah. Beefy and I were like streaming it and just screaming. about it.
Aghast
Like,
and agog.
I
Yeah.
was completely aghast at it. I was like, I like it because it's fucked up.
I'm like, no, my reaction, and Break will remember this, was like, they resolved this quest in a way where technically no one should be happy.
yeah.
Literally,
Yeah.
the definition of compromise, and a girl doesn't have a father now.
It's fucked up. It's
Because even though he was
It's-
right, he was an asshole about it, and then he went crazy. So no one can sympathize with his position.
It's true.
it's really interesting that that's where they chose to put Kanik's character, because otherwise, like, that dude really has nothing going on. And then, mind you, I like his design. I like his
yeah,
physical
he's a
appearance and, like, what he
vehicle for
does and
Ahau.
Yeah, but like
Yeah.
Kanik is barely a character. But I'm like, well, the characterization here is he's like, yeah, I'm okay with this, which is
It's also
no,
really
they're-
fucking
they're-
funny because throughout that quest and Natlan as a whole, the message is like, we can't get stuck in the past. We have to start anew. We have to move on. The guy who's like manuscript got stolen, he's like, whatever, I'll write a new one. And I'm like, aren't you a historian? Like, those interviews are actually priceless. But I'm
Yeah.
glad that you're
Yeah.
learning the lesson that the Canopy tribe fucking did not.
also wasn't that guy a Sumeru scholar? So that was sort of a Sumeru plotline anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Fuck those guys.
Yeah. I do think, back to 5.1, I do think that, like, yeah, I think they framed the conflict appropriately, too, because I do like, too, in terms of, like, Capitano's in with the plot, being like, no, Mavuika can fucking fix this, but she won't.
She
And
won't.
she's like, but my culture. And
And-
he's like, dude. Like, there are a lot of instances where they try to make characters sympathetic and you kind of just roll their eyes. Like, I love the stink man of the moosh, but he is a little shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
Capitano's like full
for
on just
Capitano-
noble.
yeah, it's like, no, it is legitimately a disagreement of what is important in terms of priorities.
Yeah.
And Genshin does not stick the landing with that, as evidenced by that dumb fat dragon that they allowed to go brain dead.
That
Yeah.
that brain dead enslaved dragon that is now a punching bag.
Like, Genshin does not stick the landing on, like, framing both sides of the conflict well. So I'm like, yeah, no, they, in terms of, like, the broader conflict of the Abyss Ward, they did stick the landing, and I feel like, you know, even if the character writing wasn't the best it could be, like, they got Auroron over on us, and he has a cool dad who works for Disney. Like,
in the goth section.
yeah.
For me, I think I'm falling on this one in the same place that Break did in the last one, which is I think it belongs between Invited to the Banquet and Actually Surprised Us.
The more I talk about it, the more I'm sure it belongs in Actually Surprised Us.
Oh man! Oh man! Ah! 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 God damn it! God damn it! This is... No one likes this vector, that's why it's called war.
We haven't actually talked about this to death yet. This is the longest conversation we've had about Natlan.
Yeah, we're like, alright, fuck it. Well, 5.2 goes in, at least it's not Meropide, because I'm bored of it.
I haven't played it, so I have no opinion.
There's barely any of it. I wouldn't even... I would put it in Invited to the Banquet just because there's nothing there. It's 15 minutes long.
Yeah. Yeah, it's Banquet. It's whatever.
It's short, therefore it's good.
Don't waste my time!
Of the game.
Yeah.
Brevity is the soul of wit.
Exactly.
Well, I think we got our tier list here, folks.
This is also a great preview for what's coming up in the episode. Like, man.
No one's happy about this, and by no one, I mean me.
You know, when you think about it, the fat dino really only could become a corpse puppet punching bag. Really, it's the only ethical thing to do.
We're never gonna let Genshin live down what they did to that poor animal.
No, we're not.
That Yoshi deserved the sweet release of Oblivion. He more than served his time, and he was crazy when he killed all those innocent people. He doesn't want to be here. He doesn't want to hurt his tribe.
Yeah, he wasn't responsible for that.
And Buck looks at Yoshi and is like, "This is something I can beat the shit out of forever."
And then he gains human speech just enough to beg Kenichi to kill him. Just do it. Let him go.
The state of education these days is so bad, and we just cannot let our good teachers not have tenure and become punching bag corpse puppets forever.
Farzan has tenure.
Remember, tenure doesn't just mean you can't be fired, it also means you can't quit.
You can't be killed.
What is getting killed if not the ultimate quitting?
Being a vampire is truly the epitome of tenure.
It's true.
Look, you can't fire people from the post office. Is all I'm saying.
God. Well, yeah, that's our tier list.
I hate this game.
We might save this. We might save this for the episode. But like, there's a really fucked up bit in Hunter x Hunter that is the same thing. That is the exact opposite reaction emotionally. For me.
Yeah.
They should have let that lizard die.
If we killed the lizard, all of Natlan would be in stunning Shade Chamber selection.
It's true. We wouldn't be as horrified by them as we are currently.
Also, Mawik is like a sad sack of a god, TBH.
Because we could just talk about it forever now.
Yeah, because it's an ethical dilemma.
Yeah.
It's not a dilemma.
That the setting
I don't think it's a dilemma either. But I'm forced to give both sides equal weight.
By the game.
By a stupid game.
But wait, Beefy, what were you saying about Mavwika?
Oh, I think she's kind of a sad shit. Like, she's kind of like my least favorite post-launch god.
I'm hoping that 5.3 is going to bring a lot of development for her, because right now I'm not.
She's really just like a super watered down A. There's nothing that sets her apart from that, and like what would make her stand apart is if she's more of like a frontline leader, which we're told she is, but we don't see it. We just kind of see her fretting and
gameplay.
Yeah.
Like she just kind of is like she just like frets and is polite and doesn't fucking make choices.
To play devil's advocate, she doesn't have a playable model outside of our dreams currently, and she can only fight in cutscenes, and she did have a big anime fight with Capitano. Like,
No, that was hype.
Yeah.
I'm not expecting tons from her as a frontliner until she becomes playable.
I don't know, like, I would have liked to have seen her, like, at least being a more capable leader. Like, she seems like less of a leader, a more like person who has to make, like, one tough-ish choice. That's also really funny when, like, when Capitano's like, make this choice, and she's like, no, our history, I can't ask people to sacrifice that part of us, and everyone else is like, yeah, do it! And she's like, no!
Actually, I don't think anyone else told her to do it except Auroron.
They're pretty gung-ho about sacrificing themselves, which is why Natlan is kind of boring.
Yeah.
Kachina
a lot of conflict when
Kachina can't be the only one with an inner strife.
Yeah.
Right, like... And plus, also, they can't die after a minute.
No, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Is like it takes a lot of the drama out of it when
we should save some of this for the episode.
Yes, I suppose so.
And also our opinions are gonna change once we.
Our opinions are gonna change. This is a snapshot.
I love snapshots.
Yes.
Hell yeah.
You know, we used to think it was hilarious that Farina got fucking ganked in an alleyway by Arlecchino. Now we think it was horrible.
Yeah.
It's still pretty funny.
It's pretty funny, but like, she has PTSD.
Yeah, this was before we realized how much like trauma baggage she was carrying with her.
We knew they were gonna make her sad. We didn't know they were gonna make her literally me.
Let's give Fiorina a scare. Says horrible woman who stalks Fiorina.
She's like, I was sitting on the park bench.
In my assassin garb. And people say that Arlecchino isn't morally gray. Like, are you fucking kidding me? Just because she doesn't kill the orphans anymore doesn't mean that she's not, like, also a heinous bitch.
She assaulted a woman in the street because it was convenient.
She
loves the orphans. She makes them every day.
She's like, no one will blame me for taking the bait. You know, there's just a little idiot walking around with no bodyguard. It's my prerogative to go and, like, choke slam her. Is it, though?
Apparently it is.
Someone's got to do something around here.
That was a good scene where it's over a year old and we're still talking about it.
That was a great scene.
Yeah.
A great scene in what we actually have said is the worst patch ever.
Yeah.
She's
the only
like,
silver lining.
It's always
like, I'm not a criminal, I'm a gray hat hacker. What do you want from me?
Yeah, it's like, you kill your own kids when they don't make it up to snuff. And she's like, now I only kill them metaphorically, okay? Jeez.
Like,
fucking liberals.
Like, I don't behead them. At least not since the rewrites.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you thought I was bad? My mother used to serve us the severed heads of the orphan she called. You guys are too soft.
You guys don't have enough.
Now I only make you eat their hands.
Yeah.
Kids these days.
Kids these days with their iPads and their conscientious objections.
God.
Well, I don't know. Any closing words?
5 point... the Natlan patches feel too high. I'm really in my hater era. I've been in my hater era for like a year and a half. I feel like Snezhnaya is gonna be good though, because like...
I mean, it has to be.
It has to be.
We already have characters we like from that region.
Yeah.
You know.
And it's like, it's so like, you know, all the time that they spent not like getting the Abyss over, they did with the Fatui and Snezhnaya. There's a lot of exciting shit going on there. Of course,
look,
this is coming from someone who, like, you know, before I even played the game, I always just assumed Fontaine would be the best one. It just had the most potential, and I was fucking wrong. So who knows?
Yeah.
Maybe 5.3 is gonna blow my tits off, and Snezhnaya is gonna suck. But that's the beauty of it. We have no idea. And this game that continuously lets us down has us by the balls.
I mean...
What if Conry is actually good? I can dream, right?
if you haven't liked the
Keep reading.
5-point patches so far, I doubt that 5.3 is gonna blow your tits off. But like,
Ugh.
I mean, like, how can any story have a satisfying ending if you don't like the characters
That's true.
or are unimpressed with the plot? You know, I'm just saying, brace yourself for disappointment because that seems like it's the route you're already on.
It's true. I'm actually not that disappointed by Natlan because, like I said at the end of our discussion of Fontaine, my bar is just so low. And I'm kind of a burnt out husk. That I'm just like, yeah, it's fine.
Well, I think
fine.
that's a little teaser for a future topic we'll probably discuss when it comes to Genshin as a whole, but especially with Natlan and maybe a little look backsy into Fontaine. But I think for now, that gives us our tier list, and thank you all for joining us on this journey.
So let us know if you agree with me about 5.x, and if you disagree with everybody else, but also me.
No, I like this. I like this. I mean, not for you. I don't want you to be sad. No. However, I like this.
No, I think a little internal conflict between the turtles is healthy. This is the nation of war, after all. We can't all be, glazing the story or whatever.
We can't all be pleasant and
banal.
We
we can't all want the dinosaur to pass peacefully into eternal sleep like he's
No, but he wants to fight. He likes to fight.
He told us he doesn't. He told us he wants to die.
He begged us for the sweet release of death.
We've been on this fat dino for like 20 minutes. We need to move on. We need to end the video.
We can't move on.
No, we should keep it alive forever.
We can't move on. They didn't let him move on.
If you agree that Kongamato should die peacefully, give us a super thanks. If you disagree, give us a super thanks, but say why. Or gift a super thanks. I don't know. Fuck. But thank you so much for supporting us. Making it slightly more feasible for us to do what we do. This is a lot of work for something that we're kind of feeling I'm feeling a little more lukewarm on. But I still like being here in this space, finding things that are worth discussing, and sharing it with y'all, because that is what the Shade Chamber is all about. And lizards.
And lizards.
And lizards.
Now get the fuck out.